Hi, in this video I'll cover how you can use the Figaf tool to automate your SAP PI migration. We'll first cover how to set it up, how to read the assessment, how to migrate integrations, how to test taking messages from PI and run them on Integration Suite. And this is also applicable if you're just using the Figaf tool as a free one without using our built-in migration. But to give you the end-to-end process, this is the best approach. So let's get started. I hope you have installed the Figaf tool. If you do not, there is a video that I would link up here that you can go to that shows you how to install the tool, how to get started, and all of these different things. I hope you have also configured agents both for PIPO and for cloud integration. And then obviously you need to synchronize the content. When you do your first synchronization, there can be problems, so you need to forcefully synchronize the content. We'll cover that again. Just some key URI elements. We have this arrow here. That means that you can open this line to see more about it. There's an empty line in the beginning. This allows you to select the line. And then we have this burger icon at the end of lines, which means that there is more actions to be performed on this. Okay, if we go to the first part of the migration is to set up how do we understand this migration, what is it actually it contains. And to do that, you will go into the configuration tab. Here you can add source PO systems, so you'll select all the systems that you'll be using for your migration. You will select the CPI systems that you want to migrate to, and finally you'll select the productive systems that you want to be using. Here the agent needs to be production, and this would allow you to understand what has been migrated to it. We have also introduced this parameter replacement value. This is about if you are migrating, and I see a lot of customers that does not migrate from from the development or QA, but from production, and then they want to use the production value. So with this, we have search replace of all the externalized parameters. So if you have a host that says QA SAP host.figaf.com, it would then on Figaf partner be replaced to subdev.figaf.com. So you don't need to remember what are the changes of your ERP host names, S4 host names. All of these different paths, they can be automatically translated as a part of this. This just makes it easier for you to migrate and allows you to remember less about what is going on. Good. We also have the migration overview. This is your cockpit to understand what is going on with the migration. Where do you start? What's the important part about these things? And here we have one screen that gives you an overview of your full migration. It's one place to start. And you can link IFlows that already has been selected. So it's pretty simple to just go around selecting these things. So let me show you what this will look like. So first we'll go into the configuration. Here we can go in and select the systems that we have, the CPI system we want, and we can add these parameter replacements if we want that. So obviously this is optional depending on if you actually need it. Good. Now we have the migration here. The first thing we want to do is create an assessment. The assessment is our way of collecting data about your PO system that gives you all the data that you need to take considerations for managing the migration. The data in this is, well, it is readable, but obviously requires a bit of effort to go through, and also some of the things that you would need to spend some time on understanding, but it is quite a helpful tool. So we normally would add filters to log the first line, etc. So the way we have it, we have the source system, so you can obviously migrate from multiple systems. We have the ICO status placed, and then we have a number here. The number then designate where this has been used, or the number of different ICOs. You would see some places where you would have the same number twice. For instance, this one. Here we have the same number twice, and this is because this has two different operation mappings and receivers. So there is duplicity on ICO level here, but that matches well with what you want to achieve when you're doing the migration. So we first have the name of the ICO. Our attempt at defining what scenario this is. There's sometimes we cannot define it, and it's undefined. We have the adapter types or communication channel type, and it's really easy to just go through and you find out all the different ones. I normally recommend put this into a pivot table, and then you can go around figuring out all the different scenarios that's important, like how many different adapter types, what are the different modules we have. We have sender communication channels, receivers, sender. We have all the operation mappings that is being used. We have the number of message mappings. We have something about are there anything based on in this operation mapping that could give us problems. So this could be parameters. Sometimes this would be around what SAP's migration tool. We know that there's challenges out there. Sometimes this is just to inform you also about some of the challenges that we have seen on this. We can see the receiver parties, modules. We added also agent receiver data, so you can see where this is being sent. And this is also quite useful when you are managing the migration. We have the number of test cases were created, and then we have some data about how many times this message has been processed over the last period of time. All in all, this gives you a good overview of what has been worked on. You can also see a tab here that says what has been migrated, and this is obviously quite useful when you have started the migration. So that is the assessment and understanding that. Spend some time on it, get to know it, and the assessment will not cover what is it that you need to migrate, what's all the things that's important. It will give you an idea about where there could be potential problems, but there is potential problems that we have not seen or have not implemented into the report as of now. So use it as an indication, but yeah, but know that there could be things that we would be missing on it. Okay, so let's say you have migrated something using the SAP's migration tool. You can go here, you can select a line, you can say link to an IFlow, and then you can simply say this IFlow has been migrated with the SAP tool to this this IFlow. So that means that in our list we now have this registered as it has been migrated, making it easier for us to understand what is going on. And we can see if it is in production, what kind of test cases we have for it. But let's go around and create our own. So one thing you need to know here is you need to do synchronization. You would select the PO system. You would select these objects here, at least possibly independent object, this one. If you do the synchronization, it will download all content, try to rebuild it. You may need to do this a few times because there's a lot of components that is in place that is important for this to work. So do be curious about that to make sure you have all the right data in place. And you would find this when you go to the migration. If there's something that cannot be migrated and you'll get some errors, then this would be the place that you can actually see what is going on and why you would experience some problems. This takes a little while, but I guess we can continue without it. There's anyway more we need to cover. So to do migrations, we have a number of options. So we can use this to filter, and I think this is the preferred way. We can also just go directly to the migration, select an operation mapping, and then use the Figaf tool to migrate that into an IFlow. So if you already have an IFlow but just need the Figaf tool to migrate these mappings, you can use that. If you you can also do it without the help, but the easiest is obviously just to go here, find an IFlow you want to migrate. So just select it here. We can see here we have this going to do more actions on it. We will select the package. Auto migrate, that's okay. We will call it demo invoice train. So this is what we need to do the migration. We then have a number of options, some different profile types, but let's just first go through here. So create an assessment, prepare the migration, the script collection, that's important on. So we do have a script collection that handles some error handling scripts. You go into the discovery part of your integration suite, search for Figaf. There's one that's called connector for Figaf there. Copy that to a tenant and deploy those artifacts from it. Then we can also come with updates, and you can see that there's updates for these sort of things. So there is one important thing for this. This is the ability to add it as an error handling step. You can also use different artifacts as a part of this. There's something for monitoring, there's something for testing JMS, and process direct in it. Here's the process for migrating. Select the ICO into package, but I guess we'll cover those anyway in a bit. We will cover the data debugging. So once you've pressed check, the Figaf tool will collect all the different data that you have. It will bundle them into a zip file, and you can download the zip file, and then you can upload it at helpfigaf.com. If there is something that you're saying, oh, there's some problems with this, download the screenshot, add whatever that otherwise is relevant and what are the problems that you experience with this. Before you do that, be sure to have done the full synchronizations as I just showed you. That will solve a lot of these problems. We have, for now, 3 profile types. We have the local processes. This is the one we normally recommend for migrations. This allows you to separate the flows into local processes, making it more robust. We have a profile for B2B scenarios. This is used if you have an operation mapping you want to be using into the B2B scenario. We will create some more content about migration and the B2B setup, because there's a lot of different things to work on in those scenarios. And then we have one that's a single process. This was the original one we created. We don't really recommend it, but it is there, and you can use it if you still need that. Then mapping of channel. So PI communication channels have some parameters. Like host names, like ports, like URLs. And when you're doing the migration, it is obviously important to be able to leverage as much as possible from these scenarios. And this is what the Figaf tool do with these templates. So here we can see the number of the communication channels. We can see some of these templates that allow you to migrate this content. And this is one of the things that makes it really easy. So if you have a communication channel with some parameters on, it is really easy just to add. So say you have a file system that's migrated to an SFTP. You can later go in and create a mapping, your custom mapping about how to do the conversion. And then for all the following scenarios that are using the same, you can apply this mapping. We have supplied some default one but you can obviously enhance this, and we'll cover that later. You can see the receivers and interfaces that would be selected. So here you can exclude some parameters that you do not want. We have the sharing of resources. This is what would allow you to migrate scenarios in, or so say you have a message mapping that will be migrated into 2 different IFlows. Once you have corrected it in the first one, it will be reused in the second one. And probably more importantly, this is for script collections, XSLTs, where the Figaf tool keeps this versioning of the object, and if something changed in one of the IFlows, you can replicate this change into all the other ones where it's used. It's talking about function libraries. The Figaf tool supports 2 function libraries. As of today, here in November 23, there is the following limitations of these things. So we can either use the SAP's Cloud Integration Function Library object, where you go into it and select import, and this would import these objects, and the object will then be linked with this. You can also, it has some limitations here. And then we have the Figaf Groovy conversion, where we take the Java and convert it into Groovies. Here we can migrate it with channels, but obviously you would need to do something on the channels. There's something, and we have seen a few examples of Groovy versus Java. There is some things that you need to rewrite. All values of queues not supported. The functions uses context, not container, which means that you would need to rewrite some of those areas where you're using containers. And then you have dynamic attributes. Once you have done the migration of the first scenario, it is really easy just to continue, GrooveScript. And once you have updated the libraries to use the functionality with this replication technology, we are able to actually reuse that in all scenarios. The last here is the migration log. This gives you a good understanding about what are the potential problems with this. So that could be, so we see here that there's something about a container variable that's used that we need to go in and fix. We need to check if the Figaf script is there, and there could be some problems with user-defined functions, etc. The full list is obviously changing about what we do support, but this is some of the things that we support that just makes it easier to do the migrations. So parameters is mapped correctly, both in the UI and operation mapping, making it easy to do the migration. We have multi-mapping support, so they are automatically packaged and exported. We have function libraries we talked about. Message mappings are used and separated into, if you have RFC lookups, the Figaf tool will create a Groovy functions that covers this. But you would need to implement the RFC lookups. We support extended receiver determination. That's probably more on the routing side. And then XSDs and whistles with import statements. Some of the other differences that SAP have fixed templates. That means it's fairly easy for them to add new templates, but it also means that they would need a large number of templates to support the different use cases. So how many mappings do you have? What are the differences? That is one of the things that could cause some problems. We generate the IFlow based on the content in the interface and the number of receivers, splitting it out, making it easy to do routing based on what you already have. And yeah, you can also convert communication channels with the custom XSLTs. Let's take this later. Okay, so let's see how this works. So we will select the local process. We can select process type GMS. It will come up with a GMS queue name for using this process. You obviously need to check is that is not used, and it is only, for now we only allow 20 characters. There were some limitations that was scheduled to be removed, but let's see. So here we can see the different properties that has been found. We can see here we can select another input point if we want to. We can also see the receivers here, so if we want to map it with a different adapter, we can go in and do that. We can go in and say, hey, we only want to send it to this one and exclude this scenario. we can see here, do we want to use the reused artifact or something else? And then we have, for instance, we have this user-defined function here. We can select here, we want to use this user-defined function that has already been migrated with this scenario into it. But we'll just reuse shared artifact. Notice if you do make changes, for instance, to this one and switch around on it, you need to use the override artifacts. So just make sure that you are updating the mapping and not just reusing one of the templates that it already has. We can see here some of the things that was a problem with it. So in this order groupies, there was a container variable that we need to fix. And we can also see some of the user names and passwords that we need to, credentials and need to pass in. So the Figaf tool will not allow you to copy or migrate credentials. There you need to go into the CPI and deploy these credentials. Once we have checked, we can press check, and you will check multiple times with this. We can select preview. Here you can see, does this make sense? Can we actually use this for our scenario? And is it able to understand what's going on? And this is really a good way to see, does the migration tool work? Once you're satisfied with the setup, you select migrate, and then this will say, oh, we need to license this, and then you need to pay for this migration. If you have some free licenses, obviously those would be used first. But this is the point where you decide, yes, it makes sense to migrate this. So the packet is used by someone else. Let's just use this one. So now we can see as it has been migrated. We can open this IFlow. And now we can see the IFlow that has been created. So we can see here it creates one receiver branch for each of the different scenarios. We have one here for one processing for each of the receivers. We have the message mappings. There was something that we needed to check, some of the scripts. So we needed to go into this script here. We can see it said that it used a container. I think I just removed it, but we do check if container is used, something like that. So this seems okay. And obviously, if you have the Figaf tool open, you can also open this in the Figaf tool and edit it there. So there's a lot of cool things here that you can obviously go around, check out what are the IFlow that is creating, what are the settings scenarios we have for this. We have scenarios here, and here we can see the retry process that it is sending the DMS. And the thing we wanted here was that we only wanted to use the DMS if we get an error when processing this. Then it will go into the GMS, and then that specific message will be processed again with this. And this was one of the main reasons we wanted to use this local processes, because then we have this ability to rewrite scenarios. Cool. But yeah, that is actually all you need to do. You just go in and you say edit, check the things that exist, then you save it as a version and select deploy. We could obviously also just deploy it in the beginning, but you would need to check these communication channels, what is actually needed as a part of these, and that is quite important. You can see here the routing capability that has been added. We have checked these parameters that they exist. Okay. The next thing is adapter-specific XSLTs. So say you have an adapter, so you have migrated a scenario using a file or FTP, and you want to use that as a template for following scenarios. Then we can create our own XSLT that covers this for your specific scenario. And previously it was pretty challenging. Now we have created inside of here, so that it is really easy. You can see the items that we have created here. We can see this is the XSLT. If we want to create our own demo, you would select here communication channel. So let's just say the GMS. We will select an IFlow we would be using as template. So let's just take this one. We can select where to migrate it from. So let's just use this one. And then we say generate template. This will take that specific flow step and say, okay, we want to create a connection that looks precisely like this. And we can see here it contains all these properties. We can add externalized properties. If they had it, then they would also be populated down here. We can add warnings, errors that would be shown using XPath and extracting the relevant data, like port host manager here. We can then run this. So we'll send this to the system and then we can save it over here. And we can also add the profile here. And now I can save it. And that means that next time I'm doing migration from this GMS sender, I'll be using this as the template. And this is one of the things that makes it a lot easier for you to manage the migrations. And here you can see everything that exists as a part of this and what they are up to. Cool. So that's the custom XSLT. We have migrated. We have seen that everything works successfully. Good. Now we want to test. And testing is obviously one of the things that is sometimes, well, I guess all of these things is, but testing is also a bit of a challenge that we need to figure out where can we get the test data, and how does this make sense, etc. You should obviously have configured the agent. There is some. We do have our own module that you can install. For most scenarios, we do not recommend it. But there could be some reasons that it would be requested. But we are moving more and more to just using the standard mechanisms for managing these things. I think it's more if you have an older system that this could be useful. You should have synchronized the content, and you should have some iCode where you can trigger messages on. I think that's one of the key areas. At least when you're beginning, it should be easy for you to trigger new messages on a scenario. So we have 3 ways of, well, I guess there's 4 ways here, but in general 3 ways of testing. So we can use the PI logging, PI message log. This is the part that is logged inside of the ICOs, where you do not need to modify the objects. Only thing would be to add specific logging step if that is required. We have SAP log module. This would allow you to. This is where the Figaf tool would add logging elements to a part of your process, where it would add the modules into the processing chain, allowing you to fetch the data in after modules has been processed. So this is really useful when testing EDIs, etc. We have our own module. This is, if you have older systems, 7.31, 7.4, and early 7.5 versions, this is a good place to use this, because it would allow you to fetch these payload in a different way. It also have some advantages that you can use it without persisting all messages, but only say, give me the next 100 messages. So there could be some advantages of using it. And then finally, we do have a dual stack recording. This currently does not work in BTP. But it should also be possible to this setup. So to create a test case, we first need to and when we're creating test case, we have 3 options. We can either select previous messages, we can select specific messages, or we can select future messages. And in many cases, depending on what kind of logging settings you have, in some cases you would actually be able to fetch previous message. In other scenarios, it is preferred that you go in and create this yourself. You can send test messages using the So if you're sending test messages in using the ICO or the message sent, you should be using the ICO logging, because that's what will give you most value there. And then you should hopefully have some guides, or we'll create some guides on to see what's going on. You can see prowling process and what's going on. One thing is, if you have messages that is using split, you will need to give Figaf an understanding of how do we split these messages. So say you have an invoice that is being split into multiple lines, you need to specify, how do I find these lines? And I think we'll actually cover it in this scenario also. Okay, so let's get started. So we have our IFlow here that we migrated. We can see it has a migrated sample here. And I still have the filter on, so I don't see the other one that was already migrated. First is I will go in and record messages. Here I'll create a new test suite that is called invoice. So you can bundle test cases into test suites in different ways to make it easier for you to figure out where these exist. We here have some options here to fetch future messages, historic messages, and chosen message groups. So if you just want to say, okay, give me one of the messages that were processed earlier, then you can use that as a scenario. You can also give it different names. So it will default use this name. You can also add partner name, and in here you can add XPath expressions, and this would allow you to actually say you have invoices that are both credit and debit, credited and normal invoices. Then you would be able to distinguish these and create different test cases for it. We can see here if there's any problems here. So it says here that the scenario is AE. For just some warnings here that we need to validate. So we cannot validate it's okay, but this seems to be okay. Sometimes you would also see some actions here. We can update channels with password, but let's just say, okay, let's fetch future messages. We also have some setups here if we wanted a specific thing. If you, for instance, if we have JSON payloads, we can add it here. We can add a synchronous response by selecting it here. So let's say here, I will send this message in. So now it will check the system to see if everything is okay. And now we will be waiting for someone to process a message on this scenario. So I'll just, on the other screen, send 3 messages in on this scenario. We have seen that this sometimes takes a little while for it to process in the background. So we can see here, and this is important, you see here, okay, so there was some payloads were not found. So this is because one of the scenarios took a little longer to process. We can see the processing log. This gives us some more details about how we are polling these things, probably more for our debug purposes. You can go in here and click what has been found. And the last thing is here, you can see where we have some data, and you can see here that there was something on this line item here that was not found because we pressed poll too early. So this gives us a good understanding of what's going on. We can also click here, and here we can see the messages, payload, and the processing. So right now it seems like it is okay. Let's see if we can actually, I don't think it will re-poll these messages. If something goes wrong, you can just say create a new copy of this, fetch future messages, that's okay. So now I'll just send a new message in this. So you can go in and you can just delete this. So now this would be deleted, the old one, and we can select here and poll messages. We are still getting some problems with it, that some of the messages was not found, payload not found. But if we look here, they are all successful. You can also see here the browse message log to see what's going on. So let me just refresh here. So we just have one. Let me just give it a little longer time. So we'll just copy it again. Fetch future messages. So we'll delete this old one. And I'll just give it a minute. Alright, so let's see if it's able to pull this. We're still getting a problem with the specific interface. So now we would have different options. We can actually go in and say, okay, let's instead use the scenario validation, and that means that we will go in here and say, okay, let's change this setting here, override scenario, then we'll select use SAP logging instead. We'll press save. And now we need to, the tool will add module. It comes up here with a warning saying, hey, we cannot validate if the scenario is. We also need to say that this is exactly one, so we can do that. So we will create a new version of this. So let's say copy here. Now it will go onto the system and add these modules. So if we look here at the data, we can see that it has been added modules here in the beginning and the end of the processing. We can see we have stage 1, this is the original one. We have stage 4, this is before we send it to this target system. So let's see if it pulls better now. So now we don't get any warnings, and we can see we're getting 1 incoming and 3 outgoing messages. So now we have a test case. What we can actually go in here, we can see the details, we can see what are the messages that we have for this. And we have here this line here, which is causing us will be causing us some problems, but we'll cover that later. So we can view the details here, we can go in here, we can format the payload, and I think we have this ID here. That's a challenge. So we have here calculate order numbers, but if we go in here and we say create test case, we can select which landscapes this needs to be on if we have created landscape. We'll request the license, so that's good. And now it says here there's actually a duplicate. This would not work on this specific message. So to fix this, and this is obviously only in those scenarios where you have scenarios, you'll need to add an XPath here on the order. And you'll press save. And you will need to do the same on the testing process. Here you also need to say it is this parameters that we want to be using when we are splitting this. We can then go back. And if we then open here the message details here, we can see this order here is just default. If we click here, we can see it will then use the messages that it has and be using that to determine where this payload exists. So that's good. If we wanted to, we can also go in and make modifications to it. So if we have something that we actually know will be changed for some specific reason, we can go in and we can change it here. Daniel. Not sure if this will be used in the scenario. And then, yeah, this opens in separate ones. We can now create a test case based on this. And notice here we are still looking for the next 2 messages that's being processed. We don't really want that, so just click delete so we don't get more test data for this. So now we have created a test case. We can run it on the PO system, where we'll send it into the PO and then we'll be able to process and see if everything is correct here. For migration purposes, this is really not what you want, and it's not a part of the free migration license that you have. Good. Well, let's just see if it. So here we'll also be polling. We can see the view of the result here. We can expand it, and we can see there's a difference here. So we can see it's this we expected the value to be Daniel, but we received this instead because we modified the test expected payloads manually. Okay, now we go back to the overview, and now we have the second part here, the testing of migrated IFlows. You obviously need to have this created already. Normal test case, check that it is delivered. We do have options to do mocking. It is a little more complicated, and obviously require you to have recorded these in and outbound payloads. So you need to use the third state locking for these scenarios. Good. So let's get started. So we can see we have the test case here, but we do not have we have 0 test cases here. We will select record migrate test cases. We can select the test case we want to migrate. You can migrate multiple different test cases at once. And we can say here, migrate. We'll add it to the same test suite. You can obviously create a new one that is called invoice CPI if you want to. And you can see here what are the different messages that we want. If you have used SAP's tool for doing migration, you can go in here and you can select where we should find this specific step, or where we can find this, or where we would expect this payload to be created. So we'll just say save. And now we will create this migration test case. We can go in here and the more details on it. We can see the messages that we have. We don't at the moment have determined these data for it. Do have some method anonymization, not really useful here, but then we can create it, which will then request a license for this object. And when we press, we can open this IFlow. And if we check here in the messages to see if something has been run, we can see it has run, and there was a different scenario that ran that also caused some problems. Okay, so let's see here. It comes up here with a warning saying, hey, we have polling, but there was complete. What's the status of this? And yeah, you can see the details here. You'll see much of the same information about what's going on, what has been polled, what were the messages, steps that were in this, and where do we actually find data in. So when doing this, we have some test configuration. Here we can see that the order expression was not copied in, so probably we'll need that ID. There's some different steps, use different IFlows if you want to have all flows or just one flow for it. So let's see here. And we can see we're now getting some errors. We received one of the message, but the other ones got into some different errors, so we could not really create these. So we need to run it again. And that's the beauty of it. You just send some more messages in, and let's see if they are created in the right order. So now we can see that we are getting these as successful. We do have a different view. So this is a flat table view that gives some other details, but I think generally we recommend this because here you can see what for the specific message where we're able to deliver it and what was going on here. So if we look at the details here, we can see that there's a that this element here was wrong. So we can easily ignore these elements and then process a full comparison again, or you can do a subsplit, but it is still failing, and this is because we still have this error because we changed some of the original payloads. We can update the test case, and this is one of the things that you will be needing to do is to go here, select update test case, drop all messages, and then you can rerun the tests. And now we should see it as successful. So it is successful. If we look at the diff here, we can see that now we are expecting this. So it is possible to massage these test cases so they always are relevant and always make sense for you as a part of the migration to run it. So that was what I wanted to cover in this this video. I hope you liked it. The next step in this is the DevOps, and there's a new video, or there's another video on that. You should be able to see it also. And here we will show you how you can move this transport into production, reuse the test cases that you already have created as a part of this, and do more details about how to manage the testing. I do hope you like this. Please hit the like, and please share it with your team colleagues. Thanks for watching.